เจ้าคุณครับ so we are all here because we want to be doctors, and since the first day of admissions, the professor like asked us during admission, why do you want to be a doctor? And after we get in, there's always question like, which specialty do you want to go to? What kind of doctor do you want to go to? Do you want to be a professor? Do you want to be a GP? And on the opposite end, we were always constantly told, you know, don't fail, don't you know, don't fail. Just yeah. So there are states that we don't want to be in. You know, you don't want to fail this test. You don't want to um, fall behind. When does that become like a part of the suffering like แบบ
Yeah.
ประมาณว่าวิภาวะตัณหาภาวะตัณหาประมาณเนี้ยครับ like when does that become a suffering?
Yeah, I think there's a useful distinction to be made between like pressure and stress. You know, I think it's possible to be under pressure and not to feel stress. And of course, that's something like really interesting to do. I mean, you're never going to be in a position, especially as a doctor, where you're not under pressure for various reasons, time pressures and financial, I don't know, all kinds of different pressures. So that's not going to happen. But stress is, you know, we use the word you use, like vipawatanha, and it's thinking or so just make a point about thinking. So we can look at thinking in two important kinds of thinking in terms of as a mental factor. Something happens in your mind. So you hear a sound, okay, say sound of a bird, and then something happens. Something pops in your mind. Oh, there's a bird singing outside the window. Okay, so that's a like inconsequential thought. It's not a karmically significant thought. But then you think, oh, that bird, that's such a lovely bird. That reminds me of that bird that was singing outside of our hotel when we were on holiday last month. Oh, what a great holiday that was. Do you remember we went to that restaurant and oh, that meal, I really like Italian food. It's just so great. I wonder whether we could get some, and you know, your mind just go off right halfway around the world within a matter of a second. And this, so you have this initial thought, it's like a trigger thought, and then you have the thought that you create something out of it. And that creating something we call kitbrungta, okay? So the part of the mindfulness is being present to your experience. So when you have that kind of trigger thought, you don't necessarily have to just grasp onto it and brungdang. You don't have to create a story out of it, particularly if it's a story that's depressing or creates anxiety in your mind. You recognize it as a thought. And so this is one of the most important skills, life skills to learn. And you know, you can summarize it very simply as like recognizing a thought as a thought, as a process, as something that happens. It's an event. It's a mental event. So, you know, something comes up into your mind. If you lack mindfulness, especially if it's something kind of meaningful or that you've thought about before, your mind just, you know, dok wrong, you know, it just goes into that. But if you have that sufficient clarity and sharpness and brightness of mind, you recognize there's that thought again. Don't follow that one. You don't need to. Why would you follow it? Why would you create a story out of it? And then it just passes away by itself. But without mindfulness, you can't do that. It's not something you can just decide not to worry about something or decide not to get stressed out about something. So again, you know, the kind of things to look into as well are this whole area of success and failure, and how you understand those words. What is it to be successful? What is it to fail? And you know, I think most people who are really develop something in their life, they feel a lot of gratitude for their failures. Often I think maybe already you've seen, you learn often a lot more from your failures than your successes. Because every time you fail, you learn, this is another way not to do it, and it's easy just to take things for granted when you're successful. And also to see how the what happens in your heart with success and failure. If you've been brought up in a family or a school in which parents or teachers have tied your sense of your self-worth, or even how lovable, how you are, according to how successful you are, there's then you can be really triggered by that whole sense of failure, and